Hello, welcome to this episode of the Martial Truth. Sensei, Sempai, Dohai, Kohai. All right, we'll get into it in a second, what those mean and what they mean to us as martial artists, okay, and the cultural context. First couple things. Again, if you like the video, click that like button. It means a lot. Subscribe, share, tell your friends, okay? Hope everyone enjoyed the Russ Smith interview. Got a lot of good feedback. People seem to really like it. This coming Sunday, I'll be conducting an interview with Andreas Quast, who's authored several martial arts books, which I'll put up on the channel in the near future once the interview is completed. And I have a few other interviews lined up that I think people will find interesting. I hope you do, all right? If you have suggestions for people you'd like me to interview, please feel free, shoot me a message, okay? May 4th, I will be conducting a webinar, a seminar via the web. I'll put the link in the description. It's on the Nunchaku. I hope to get through a bunch of, Nunchaku basics and show people how to use the weapon, strike with the weapon, block with the weapon, and also possibly get through at least part of the Matayoshi Nunchaku Kata. I'm doing that webinar for the Neoclassical Karate and Kobudo Association, of which I'm a senior advisor. They asked me to do it. I'm doing it free, okay, to help them raise money to bring instructors in from Japan and Okinawa. All right, so that's coming up on May 4th. And like I said, I'll put the description in the details. It's the Kata Stupid T-shirts are available, so you can click on a link below through the store and get those if you're interested, or Matayoshi Kobudo shirts, Chen style, Ishinru, whatever you want is there, okay? All right, so now with that out of the way, let's get into today's subject. So the word sensei, I often ask people what the word sensei means, and they tell me teacher, and that's not what it means. The word sensei means one who came before, okay? So denoting, symbolizing someone that has been around longer than you, working at something longer than you, all right, has a deeper understanding of the thing you're trying to learn, okay? In my dojo, virtually everyone calls me sensei. It's funny, even the Chinese martial arts students call me sensei. I don't get hung up on it, all right? Some people do. I don't, okay? There's a handful that might call me shifu, and there's a couple of people in the New York school that might call me kancho. Kancho meaning head of the school. But, people are always looked to seem to be elevating themselves by adding titles, verbal titles, which don't exist. For instance, Shihan, Kyoshi, Hanshi, Renshi, these are not verbal titles. We don't call people that, okay? So I know when I asked Master Shimabuku in Okinawa what I should call him, he said sensei. And he pointed to me and said, you're a sensei too. We both need to practice. Okay, that's it in a nutshell. Very simple. So sensei means one who came before. In my school, especially in New York, where there's a lot of black belts, all right, and I teach multiple arts. So funny thing in New York school is the guy running the Ishinru class on a Monday night, when we finish the Ishinru class and we go into Kobudo, he may not be the senior guy in Kobudo. And a guy that was junior to him in the Ishinru karate class is now senior to him in the Kobudo. So the more senior black belts in the New York school, and I have people out of 7th, 6th, 7th, 8th dans, okay? Pretty much all the Q students call most of the black belts sensei. And a lot of times they'll maybe add their first name, Sensei John, Sensei Jimmy, Sensei Mike, whatever, right? Especially with the kids. But with the black belts, when the black belts talk to each other, for the most part, they call each other by their first name. They don't say, "Oh, Sensei Jimmy." If they're a 6th dan, they don't say, "Oh, Sensei Jimmy, could we go over this?" Or, Sensei Dean, could we go over this? Right? They just say, "Hey Dean, could we go over this?" I mean, they all call me Sensei because I'm the head instructor. All right, so it's understood. They don't all necessarily call me Sensei when we're outside the school. Some people call me Mike. I don't get hung up on that, on the fact that someone calls me Mike outside the dojo setting, it's my name. Okay. Some people will only call me Sensei, and that's okay too. And I had a lot of the police officers I worked with jokingly at work only call me Sensei. That was one of my nicknames at work as a police officer, right? Which I found kind of humorous, right? So, just keep that in mind with the word Sensei. We get hung up on these things a little bit, and I think it's unnecessary. Just to understand what the title means, one who came before. It denotes respect. When I studied bonsai, which is the pruning of the Japanese trees, the miniature trees, I studied that for a few years, okay? The person I studied with, I called him Sensei. In Go, which is a Japanese game, you'll refer to a senior teacher of Go as Sensei. So again, it's not just for martial arts. It's something of respect, all right? So just some things to keep in mind with that title. Now let's talk about Senpai. So Senpai means senior. And I see this thing with some dojo where, I go in and the white belt comes over to the brown belt and goes, Senpai so-and-so. And I always am like, huh? Right? Never heard that in a Japanese dojo. And listen, I've trained in many. Remember, I trained in Koru, the ancient Japanese arts, along with karate. I've never heard that used in Okinawa or Japan. So again, in the West, we start adding things to things. We start making things important that aren't important. The white belt should know that the green belt is his senpai, his senior. The green belt should know that the brown belt is his senior. Okay? The person that lines up at the very end of the line, because you go by rank, right, knows that everyone ahead of him is his senior. The person that's at the head of the line knows that everyone below him is his junior. And again, that can change. When you're like me and I teach multiple arts, you could have a very different configuration of that line depending on the art. Okay? A guy could be a 5th degree black belt in Isshinryu Karate and then he decides to study Mariyoshi Kobudo. Okay, guess what? He's at the end of the line. All right? That's the way it goes. All right? And, he works hard and he moves up just like everybody else. All right? So the way we misuse these things in the West, I just don't understand. It's like, why does a guy who's a brown belt, all right, feel he should be called senpai? It's just senior, okay? Understand that there's two terms, Yudansha and Mudansha. The word Mudansha, Mu means nothing. Yudansha means something, okay? So Yudansha is above black belt. Mudansha is below black belt. So what are they telling you if you're below black belt? Well, Mu, you're nothing, okay? So, and even frankly, once you make the early grades of black belt, you're not much better in the pecking order, so to speak, especially in Japan. Usually at 4th dan, they start taking you a little more serious, okay? So senpai just means senior, and it's understood. Kohai means junior. The senpai-kohai relationship is very important. So in my dojo, I try to foster that relationship. So the senior knows their job is to help guide the junior, to help him along on the path. And to not abuse that relationship. Well, you're my junior, so you have to put my bow away. Well, you're my junior, so you have to carry my bag into the dojo. Utter nonsense. And this relationship, this senpai-kohai relationship, is often abused in Japan. It's 100% often abused in Japan. Dirty secret, but it's a fact. Okay, I've seen it myself firsthand. Myself personally, I never put up with it in a dojo. So if a senior guy in a dojo thought he was going to, pick on me or abuse the senior-junior relationship, he found out real quick, well, that was not going to fly. And once he found that out, he backed off. Okay, so it's a bullying tactic. Okay. A sensei has to make sure this is not going on in his dojo. It's extremely important. If the senpai-kohai relationship is abused, it begins to create problems. One, it creates cliques within the dojo. And then you have this idea of, like we see it in college fraternities, right? Hazing. You have that. You have that. You'll see it in sumo. The world of sumo has it. The Senpai Kohai relationship is abused all the time in sumo. Again, this is the dark underbelly of certain things within the Japanese culture. Okay. We can't sugarcoat it. It's a fact. I'll give you a quick story. I was the ward. I had a ward from Japan that I was responsible for. He was going to school here in the United States. His father was very wealthy in Japan, and he was going to a school, and I was at work, and I got a call that he was being expelled from the school. I had to leave work, drive up to Connecticut where he was going to school. This is one of those very fancy hoity-toity private schools, and I walked in and sat down. I spoke to him first. He explained to me what was going on. An older classmate, older school member, had been picking on him for months. Another Japanese, right, abusing the senpai-kohai relationship. And finally, the person that was my responsibility in the States had enough. And, he smacked him around. So now I go and sit down with the headmaster of the school, as you know, all proper and prim. And I'm the police officer coming up from New York, and I sit down, and he says, well, he struck him, and we don't tolerate that, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, well, I understand that. All right. But you're aware he's been physically abusing him for months and picking on him. And he looked at me, and I said, and you did nothing about it. So you did nothing about it. I said, so how are you allowing this culture to pervade a Western school? Shouldn't be. You're supposed to be a school of high education. Very high, right? Costs a lot of money to go to this school. Private boarding school. And you're allowing this stuff to go on within your halls, right? And he started like humming. And I said, well, not a problem, but I will relay to his father in Japan exactly what you allowed to happen here. And then I'm sure his lawyers will be contacting you. And the student turned out fine. He was accepted into another school and went to that school. No problems, right? But again, they want to have Japanese students there. They want to have foreign students there, but they need to understand those cultures from those countries. And, if the pecking order exists and the senior student or the older student is going to pick on the junior student, they have to pay attention to this and put a stop to it. All right? Happens in dojos all the time in Japan. I'm sure it happens in dojos here in the West. And if it is, it's because the sensei is allowing it. Okay? Shouldn't be the case. All right? The term dohai. So dohai means equal. So for instance, if, I'm 7th Dan in Mariyoshi Kobudo, and I'm with another 7th Dan, we're dohai, we're equals. Okay? Might we call each other sensei? We might call each other sensei if we're in a martial context. But I got to be honest with you. If I'm with a sensei that's a 9th Dan like me, but, he's much older, and he's been around a lot longer than me, I'll call him sensei out of respect for the fact that he's been around a lot longer. Maybe he's 80 years old or 85 years old. I mean, yeah, we're both, And if he calls me Mike, that never upsets me. Why would it upset me, right? I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. In my previous podcast where I talked about these titles and explained how people put way too much emphasis on them, all right? Again, this becomes a problem and creates problems within the dojo setting. The dojo setting should be about everybody having the same goal of improving in martial arts. And in improving in martial arts, improving themselves. Okay? So it's not just about fighting. It's about improving your character. It's about forging your will. It's about, accomplishing things. Working hard and accomplishing things. And of course, sometimes you got to push someone. You got to kick them in the butt and, push them a little bit, rough them up a little bit. Like I say all the time, the police officer students in my dojo, when I trained with them, it was more physical. because it had to be. Those guys might go out the next night and have to defend themselves. So those guys I was roughing up a little bit. The training was a little rough. But, again, everything gets adjusted, or you don't pick on people. The guy joins the dojo, he's in his 50s, and he decides he wants to start doing martial arts. And, the 15-year-old green belt is, giving him a hard time when they're training. Okay, that's an abuse of the senpai-kohai relationship. All right, it's as simple as that. You want to be respected for the way you treat people. You want to be respected for your ability. So as the senior, right, as the senpai, you want people to look at you and say, wow, I want to be like this guy. Even if you're a white belt and, you're working with a green belt and he's just really good and you're like, wow, this guy's really good. I hope to be as good as him one day, right? You don't want to have that white belt work with the green belt, and the green belt is kind of bullying him and picking on him a little bit in the training and talking down to him and maybe verbally abusing him a little bit. And when the white belt walks away, says, boy, what an asshole. I definitely don't want to be like this guy. You don't want to be that guy. You want to be the guy people want to look up to. All right, so it's very important to understand this relationship, okay? The difference between sensei, senpai, kohai, and dohai. I arrived in the Jodo dojo in Yoyogi back in like 1992, and I was staying there, so I showed up with my suitcase, and I had a big suitcase. Now I've learned to pack much lighter, but back then, early trips to Japan, I always overpacked. And then when I came in, one of the senior Jodo guys, who was an 8th Dan, told one of these students to help me with my bags. And he was a little bit older than me, and I was like, no, I got it, but no, he grabbed my bag and helped me up. And then I found out later in the week that the guy that helped me was one of the most senior Chinese martial artists in Japan. Now, he's Japanese, but he'd been studying Tai Chi and Qigong for years and years and years. Very senior in those arts. And so I gave the 8th Dan, I jokingly gave him a little bit of a hard time and said, hey, why would you make him, And he's like, he can help you, right? And the fact was that me and that individual, whose name was Hoshino Sensei, Minoru Hoshino, right? It was the person that introduced me to Chinese martial arts. We were dohai. We were the same rank in Jodo. So obviously, I had senior grades in other arts, but he was senior in Chinese arts. So, big deal, right? We were the same rank in Jodo, and in the context of the Jodo training, that's all really we were concerned about, right? But again, interesting in that dojo. Hoshino comes up to us, he speaks English, he says, hey, listen, I'm going to be doing a Qigong class this coming Saturday, and they call Qigong in Japan Kiko. He said, you guys are welcome to come if you want, but it'll be a little tough if you haven't done it. And I'm like, sure, we'll come. And here are all the Jodo sensei, the senior guys in Jodo. Guess what? Now who's in charge? Hoshino is. So the guy who is like me, just a certain level in Jodo and not one of these high dans in Jodo, now all the high dans in Jodo are hanging on his every word. And now what are they calling him? They're calling him sensei, right? So again, the difference is clear, right? Just because you're senior in one thing doesn't mean you're senior in something else. Just because you're equals in one thing doesn't mean you're equals in something else. Just because you're junior to someone in one art doesn't mean you're junior to that same person in another art, okay? And if you're sensei, it clearly means you came before, So like me in my New York school, I'm the sensei, right? Because I came before everybody else. I'm training longer, Next week, I celebrate completing 45 years training in the martial arts, right? I don't jokingly tell people, what does that mean? It means I'm old, right? It means I've been around a long time. So it's important as an instructor to understand these different terms. We like to grab these terms and attach some big significance to them. The term senpai, there's no significance to it. It literally just means you're training longer in a dojo. That's all it means, okay? And to give you an idea, in some Japanese koru, some ancient arts schools I've trained in, The person that's lining up ahead of everybody else is not the highest Dan rank, but he's been there the longest. He's training in Jodo the longest. So out of respect to him, he's at the head of the line. So sometimes that seniority, it's not about rank. You know, in the Chinese martial arts, in feeding crane, kung fu, Shihei Kwan, and Chen style Tai Chi Chuan practical method, there's no rank. There's no rank. You know, like in Chen style Tai Chi Chuan, I'm a disciple, which, you know, again, it's a special relationship between the Shifu, the master, and the student. That's different from if someone just attends a seminar or is just taking classes with that teacher. All right. But, you know, I mean, within the disciple hierarchy, there's a pecking order. And a lot of it's based on seniority. But not only seniority, it's based on ability. So someone could become a disciple later on, and if his ability is very good, well, he's looked at as a more senior disciple. So it's a little different in that context. But in Japan, it's all about longevity and how long you've been there and how long you're training. And it's important we don't abuse these titles and make more of them than what they are. If you're having people call people senpai in your dojo, I got to be honest with you, it's ridiculous. If you're having people call people Kohai in the dojo, ridiculous. It should be an understood concept and not used verbally. It's as simple as that. Again, I will repeat myself. I have never ever heard those titles used in Japan. Someone might say, oh, he's my senpai. All right, he's my senior. But I never heard that guy call that person senpai in the class. So again, stop using these titles in a way they were never meant to use for. You literally come across like a fool. So if you're a sensei and you're letting people do that, okay, and I don't want to hear it, feel free to make the comments and say, well, in our dojo, yeah, okay, well, your dojo, frankly, is wrong. It's wrong to use the titles in this way. Sempai, Kohai, Dohai, just understood. You're never calling people that. You're never saying, Senpai Joe, can you work with me on this kata? No, Senpai Joe is a green belt. He's a brown belt. You just say, excuse me, Joe, could you review this kata with me? Come on. Enough. Enough with nonsense stuff. Enough with inflating of egos. You help create monsters in your own dojo, leading to abuses, which we don't want. Okay? So, please re-examine some of the things you're practicing in your dojo. Correct them. Understand these are not correct in Japan. Nobody does this in Japan or Okinawa. Okay? So, hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, please click that like button. It takes you 2 seconds to click it. Means a lot. Helps with the algorithm. All right? You know, again, we're over 13,000 members. Appreciate you all. Over 100 memberships now, members, right? You know, and more people joining all the time. Like the instructional videos, we're adding new instructional videos there for members all the time. You know, if there's videos you like to see, if there's something you want me to address in a podcast, I will. I've been given a few suggestions, which I will be addressing in future podcasts. And like I said, we have some interviews coming up, should be good. Feel free to get those. It's the Kata Stupid t-shirts. Link in the description for the upcoming Nunchaku webinar. All right. And hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.